So let's go back to that example of that walrus in the desert. It would have been damn hard for him to make it to the ocean. He had to put in effort, but that's where his home was. This is not our home. This is living in a garbage, right? And I've used a metaphor a lot with people saying, like, you can get really comfortable in, think about those putrid dumpsters in the summer when they're like leaking garbage and that sour smell and the flies are all over it. You can get really comfortable in your own garbage. You don't even notice it. It's nice and warm. It's comfy. After a while, you're going to go nose blind, and it's going to take effort to climb out. And then you're going to have to get clean. And that's hard. That's hard. That's effort.
So let me ask you, I know it's hard, right? Just like you said, what if you go nose blind and you are in your garbage and you just don't even realize it? Did you have have you both had other men call you out that, hey, Samuel, you're kind of in the dumpster right now. Like, Chip, you kind of need to go take a shower, my guy. Like, what? Have you guys had men do that for you?
I'd like to speak to that because I'm going to give an answer I don't think you're expecting. So let's back up just a second and say, like, this metaphor about the walrus in the desert, this metaphor of the dumpster, both of those are false selves. So like, that's the false self. You're living this way that isn't true, and you feel it. I'm going to say no to that, Angelo. I'm going to answer no, I didn't. And I repeatedly asked, and the reason I think that happened, I'm going to take ownership of it. I asked in a way that was really confrontive and aggressive because I wanted to say, right? So false self again, I wanted to say, well, I made efforts. I asked people to help me get out of my shit. But they all turned me away. See, like I can stay in my dumpster, right? I did ask, but I asked out of my false self. Does that make sense? Because, and I think this is an important concept because I think a lot of people do say, well, I tried. I went to so-and-so and they turned me away. So I'm just going to go back to my old way of doing it, right? Well, wait a second. Like, how did you come? Did you come with a chip on your shoulder? Not you, Chip. I'd like to have you on my shoulder, Chip. But I hope this makes sense, and I hope it's speaking to some of our listeners going like, how is it you're asking? And I spent too many years in the wilderness because of my own stubbornness.
What are you asking? As I think about that for myself, I didn't have that. And just like you, it probably prolonged my time in the wilderness. And I think when I really think about it, I'm sure there were a couple guys that were reaching out. I'm specifically going back to the time of my injury, and one of the darkest moments of my life. It was that, right? Having to reanalyze and restructure what my identity meant to me. Who was I going to be now that I'm not going to be a police officer anymore? And that was a really hard thing because, like I said, I can't think of anything specifically, but I was still living out of that false self, so no one could have helped me. They could have tried to support or add some words of encouragement, but I don't think I was really in a place to receive any of it.
It's the power of darkness. So we were talking about that on this call last time, Angelo, about feeding your cookie jar. I don't remember the dark cookie jar. So the enemy knows what he's doing in getting you trapped in your darkness because it's really fun, it's really comfortable, and people will say, no, I don't want to be like this. Yeah, you do, because you feed it, and it takes a ton of energy. Okay, so we're talking about entropy here, right? Like, you have to use a ton of energy to get out of the trajectory that you're following. And it's why the enemy wants to trap people going back to the mission of this is to transform and save boys, save young men, instead of fixing broken men. Because when you're on that trajectory, like, if we can rescue children before that, my sort of avenue is, okay, well, let's heal the men so they don't create more broken boys.
100%.
But yeah, so I think I can pause there.
What do you think? Have you had people like that in your life reaching out to you, Chip, to kind of help you up, or what's your story with that?
Yeah, I mean, I had two experiences where, I left the church when I was very young. I mean, I got baptized when I was close to like 16, and I walked out of church and I didn't walk back into it until I was 22. And the reason why was just because I had people constantly feeding into that dark cookie jar that it was telling me that it was okay. As I got deeper and deeper and deeper into it, it was harder and harder and harder to get out of it. And, of course, like I asked questions, or I asked like, hey, like, what do you see me as and whatever. I think out of formality, not out of willingness to change. It was just like, I really don't care about your opinion, but I'm going to ask you just because you're my friend. But I'm like, I'm still going to be me. But the difference is when, you are older, you are mature, you went through things that help you become who you are, as it was last year. I mean, what did it for me when Alfredo, mentioned that, it was like, dude, like, when I saw you, it was just, and for me, that clicked, because I'm like, I saw that stretched hand, that help that came out of the left field, and I was like, I didn't even expect it. But because I knew how it was to live a life without any help and to live a life with help. And I'm like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not going back down that dark road by myself. So if there's help, I'm going to get it. But you have to make that step, and you have to be aware of people in your life that actually want the best for you. When they tell you, they don't tell you just because they want to criticize you and they point out, oh, well, you're doing something wrong. No, because maybe all along they were praising you when you were doing things right, but you didn't hear that because you were too comfortable in that. So now it's like all you take it as like, well, he's criticizing me. All you see is that I'm doing wrong. No, but all along that those people were helping you, like uplifting you in moments when you were down, but you didn't want to hear that because the smell, you're too sensitive to that without being sensitive to your own garbage that you were living in. Because it happened to me. I didn't like the smell of nice roses on the other side because it was not familiar.
Yeah, and we don't believe that we're worth it, right? Like we also tell ourselves like, I don't deserve better. This is because our false self tells us this. I'd like to, if I could expand something else and talk about this, because people have been hurt or wronged in the church. And I think that the church can set up unknowingly this false self. So there's a false self of Chip was talking about earlier, like the gangster. Chip, you'll be more gangster than I ever will be. But my false self was very directed by the church, like be a good boy, right? Be a good boy, do the right things. And both of those, right, both directions are false selves. So being a hard ass, being a tough guy, and living like this good boy goody two shoes. And the church has a hand in setting up one of those trajectories. And it has good intentions. I'm not trying to diss the church wholly outright. We are expected to live a life worthy of our calling, but that doesn't always look good, right? So again, I'll throw in another C.S. Lewis quote. When someone was asking, like, this is in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and that the character his name is Aslan. He's a lion, but he's a metaphor for God. And someone was asking when they hadn't met him, is he safe? And someone who had met Aslan said, no, he's not safe, but he is good. And men have gotten trapped in the belief that they're supposed to be safe. And we hear that in our culture. That toxic masculinity. And sometimes masculinity isn't safe, but it is good. Men need to be doing unsafe things. Now, I'm not talking about how they treat women. They should be treating women in a safe way. That is our calling. I've talked about that in terms of being a shield for our wives and for our loved ones. But there are some ways in which we should start being more good and not safe. And so living within our masculine power. So I'm going to take just one more step on this. And because I was having this conversation with a friend who admittedly, and I'm not the most like alpha male you've ever met either. Okay. Like, that's not who God made me to be. And this guy isn't either. And something that we were saying was like, we developed this belief that since we weren't all alpha male, that what we were supposed to be was the good little church boy. And it still wasn't living our true self. What I believe is the most masculine thing is being truly, authentically you. Okay. So if you're putting on some sort of tough guy persona, you aren't masculine. That's not masculine. That's being a little boy playing an act. And the same thing goes on the other side of the spectrum. I don't remember who said it. He's a saint, but he said, the joy of God, and I might be getting that part of it wrong, is man fully alive. What makes God most happy is man fully alive. And I think the way to be fully alive is to being fully authentically you. I'm done.
I love that. And that's really what this whole mission is, right?
Yeah.
It's not to,
that's right.
When we talk about restoring manhood, we're not just like, hey, let's go make a bunch of alpha males.
That's right.
Because it's funny because like that's kind of where Samuel and I met. I know the intention of that group was not to make everyone an alpha male, but that group just attracted a lot of guys that wanted to be alphas. And
that's good intentioned, right? That's where I've come to. It's good intentioned, but
good
there's
intentions.
more to it. There's more to it.
There is a lot more to it. There's another side that I'm like, there could be a little bit more focus on this. But again, time and place, right? Maybe that's how they step into it. But this whole idea of making men come alive, I know it talks about it. I think it's in Becoming a King as well, where he talks about, the world needs men to come alive.
Yeah.
The world needs men to set themselves on fire, theoretically speaking, because when they come alive and they're passionate about things, man, I was talking to, my mentor, Pastor Thomas, and he was talking to me about leading a men's group, starting another men's group, and for the church. And I was like, yeah, I'll pray about it. And I was like, well, just to let you know, some people have told me I'm a little intense, which I don't think I was being intense. Like if they thought that was intense, yeah, hey, they don't
seen you yet.
Yeah, I was like, they haven't really seen that. I was like, I was actually being nice, but okay. And then he's like, okay. He's like, don't you think I know that about you? Don't you think that's why I came to you first for this? He's like, when people ask me, or when people tell me I'm too intense, he's like, I'm just passionate. What are you passionate about?
That's their own darkness. That's their own darkness. It's their own garbage, right? You're speaking from your own garbage. It's saying you're actually showing me that I could live fully alive. So stop, right? You're too much, right? And by the way, it's the glory of God is man fully alive. That was the
and that's part of why men have a hard time stepping into whatever they're called to be, because part of it is like they don't think that it's manly. They think they have to be like, in that warrior role or that warrior identity. But again, that warrior role shows up in different ways. It's not a badge or a uniform that makes you a warrior. It's a mentality and a spirit you carry with it. And men just haven't been given permission to live. Like one of those nights, I sent you guys a picture. It was like a Friday night. I was just in my basement and I was just like mapping stuff out on these big like pieces of the easels. And I'm just sticking that paper out. The whole gym was covered in just paper, and I'm just like looking at stuff. This like mind mapping. And I look in the middle, and the middle says, I wrote a line that says, every man will die, but not every man will live. We're all going to die, but are we actually choosing to live? And when you look at this question, right, when we look at sacrificing for a family, if you've got kids, if you've got a family, more times than not in our minds, I will take a bullet for them. You know what I mean? Like, I'll die for my fam. I'm willing to die for my wife, my kids. I'll sacrifice myself. Sure. In those moments, which are probably going to be very rare, the likelihood of that happening. But are you willing to live for your family?
Yeah, that's
Are you willing to ask the real tough questions? Are you willing to give up the sin? Are you willing to give up the things that are holding you back? It's easy to die for them, but it's harder to actually live for them. To live for your family.
Yeah, and we're told to get back into our false self. the world is going to tell you, I like you better when you're in your garbage dump. I like you better when you're a walrus in the desert, because you're not a threat.
Chip, I know you got something, man. I can see it in your eyes. There's something stirring back there.
I was thinking about when we were talking about the faces, like, you know, the warrior, king, lover, friend. And I feel like so many times we spend the wrong amount of energy becoming something that we're actually not supposed to. And what I mean by that is, you guys just touched on it a little bit, is that becoming a warrior for your wife, of course, that's a beautiful thing. But a wife doesn't need somebody that it's going to be that alpha male. Your wife needs a lover, needs a friend. And yeah, there's going to be moments when you also have to train that warrior side of you, that you need to protect her and all that. Yes, absolutely. But those moments are probably going to be very rare when you're actually going to need to step. I'm not saying that you need the training or you need to be ready for it. But I would say 99% of the time, you need to be her friend. You need to be that lover, because that's what she needs. Women, obviously, right, they're more emotional. So you need to tap into that side of it. You know, you need to be a better friend. Sometimes, you know, your friend just needs for you to listen. Maybe they need a hug. Maybe they need a shoulder to cry on. They don't need somebody to be like, man, quit being a bitch and come on. You know, it's like, they don't need that. You know, even though I don't actually respond to like being babied, I actually need a kick in the butt. So for me, that actually works. But I see that most men, they do need that. Hey, it's okay. You know, you failed. No problem. I'm here to help you. You know, and I'm speaking from my personal experience. It's just that it's so easy for me to be like, well, get up, and instead of lending a helping hand, just like how it was for me. I tend to forget those moments that made the most impact in my life, was moments like that. When people were just like, I was walking on a thin edge, but people were just having their hands, you know, right under me. And their hands were like held. And I knew if I was going to fall, I was going to be all right. But most men don't have that. Not most men, but I'm just saying, like, in general, most people don't want that, don't have that. It's because of our inability to tap into the faces. We become more of a warrior, meaning like, you know, we're always on the offense. We're always like, you know, trying to get this and trying to do that. And it's like, just pause for a second. And like you said, live in the moment, or live for that moment. Don't live for tomorrow, because tomorrow is never promised. That's why the word of God tells it. You know, it doesn't tell you to count your years. It just says, like, you know, learn how to count your days. We don't know how much we have, but live in that moment. Live life, and don't have any regrets, that even the people around you will not have the regrets living the life next to you, because they knew that you did everything in your power to live in that moment, not only for yourself, but with them as well.
So I want to tie these two together. So Angelo, you were talking about, you can live or you can die, right? You can die for your family, learn how to live. And Chip, what I'm hearing you say is like, in the process of learning how to live is picking the right tool, right?
Yeah.
So you can, you know, like, you could hit someone over the head, but it might be the wrong tool. They might in that moment need a screwdriver, not a wrench. And that's a skill. And I think from the false self, you're thinking everything needs a hammer. And if you're living authentically, you start using tools more effectively, right? So if I was taking sort of the world sort of Christian idea about, okay, being this man, like, I believe I would start hitting people over the head and being this tough guy. And what I've heard people say about me is that, like, I use a scalpel. I'm very particular about how I cut, but I do cut deep. I mean, that, you guys know that. We've experienced it. But it doesn't require a machete. It requires a scalpel.
I love what you said, Samuel, because, you know, learning to use the right tool. Some people just need some tightening up. You know, it's like you're all over the place, you're all loose and wobbly, and all you need is just tie this person up. But if you take a hammer to it, you're going to break them down.
That's right.
But some people do need a hammer because they have all these walls put up that you need a sledgehammer to break through. And I love that. I love that picture.
I think that's part of the self-awareness though, because you have to see what your what your design is. And then you also got to know, what do I need in this season right now? Right. Because we've said it before plenty of times in our men's group, right? Guys need two things, a pat in the back or a kick in the balls. So for me, I also know, like, there's times where, yeah, hey man, I got you, man. You're good. You're fine, man. Life sucks. I get it. But that's really not my natural. As you guys know, like I'm more of like, hey, let's kick you in the balls. Let's see what's going on. Because I think, we go back to some part of the conversation. I wish someone did that for me. All these guys were trying to pat me on the back and tell me it's okay, but like, no, I need a kick in the balls to get me out of that rut. That's what I needed. So I find myself showing up that way for people because I never want it to be a missed opportunity. Like, and again, I have to exercise discernment too, because like there's sometimes you really just have to have that ear just to listen, and that's okay. There's a time for that too. But when you feel it in your gut, and this goes back to when you've been in the dark and you see other men that have also been in the dark, and you see that in this other guy, you're like, yeah, this guy does not need a pat in the back. He needs a kick in the balls. And then vice versa. You look at it like, hey, how do I show up best? Like, I'm not the friend that you're going to hit up like, hey, when you close like a big business deal and you want to go out, drink at a bar, let's go celebrate. I'm not that friend. But I can guarantee I'm the friend that if you need something, shit hits the fan, you can call me anytime, day or night. And I've given certain men that pull in my life. Like, you dude, call me anytime. And I really mean that. But if you want to go celebrate, like drink at the bar, do all these things, maybe once in a while, very, very rarely. But I'm not the friend to do that. And I know that.
You need both of those friends, right? So that's important. You need both of them, so like have in your life the friend that's going to celebrate with you, and have the friend that's going and know when to use those. Cause I'll share. I'm the opposite, Angelo. I'm the person, listen, there's nothing that you could do to beat me up that I haven't already done 20 times worse in my head. I'm the opposite. I need the person to come alongside me, because I can tear me apart way better than you can. So
that's so good. That's so good. I love this. This was such a great topic to talk about. And, I appreciate you gentlemen for making the time to get up this morning and record this episode. I just appreciate you guys. You both bring something different to my life, similarly, and also different things. And sometimes, I have Samuel kick me in the balls, and Chip's like, yeah, I told you, man, this is what's going to happen. I told you I didn't want to call Samuel, but this is the importance of why we do what we do, and the importance of having a brotherhood. I appreciate you, gentlemen. Thank you for showing up, continuing to support. And until we can get together again, we'll run it back.
thank you.
Appreciate you, boys.
Appreciate you.